just consider this question for a second. Could the Division Resurgence be the closest thing to the 2013 E3 trailer we have seen from the franchise yet? Yes, this mobile title, which many agents have no desire to play, could be the Division game that finally adds the mechanics we have all been waiting for. Alright agents, I know that many of you are still enjoying Title Update 15, 15.1, 15.2, 15.3, all that stuff. Getting those new items, new gear, enjoying the expertise system. But today, I want to talk about something outside of the current Division 2 universe. Like I'm sure many of you can already tell, this video is going to be about Division Resurgence. Yes, I know the first thing most of you are going to think about is who the F asked for a Division mobile game. And to that, I really can't argue much. Seriously, a few weeks ago, I would be pretty much right there with you. To me, mobile gaming has been the butthole of the gaming world. It's cheap, crappy games spewed out as quickly as possible for the most casual, and I use casual in a negative sense here, type of audience. Basically, as an easy way for slimy companies to take money from idiots filled with the worst microtransactions and just pure predatory pay-to-win mechanics. And because of so many idiots, numerous publishers even got ballsy enough to spread these diseases into core gaming platforms and AAA franchises, pretty much ruining them forever, at least for me. But I think that is just my overly negative view of the current gaming landscape. In truth, there are many mobile or free-to-play titles with MTX options that actually exist now that are fun and enjoyable. Sure, the majority of them are still garbage, but slowly we are seeing bigger and better games in the space. It is not just Farmville or Raid Shadow Legends. Again, I'm just like many of you. I did not pay hundreds of dollars on a console or thousands of dollars on a high-end PC just to play a game that seems to be 3 generations behind the times and forces me to play on a tiny touchscreen with trash tier controls. Thankfully, graphics for me is not the biggest issue for gaming. Sure, it helps, but the real meat of a game to me is in the experience. I can still go back and enjoy 20 or 30-year-old games because the base mechanics of those games stand the test of time. However, what I can't do is force myself to play games on a touchscreen and expect to have fun. Which brings me to Division Resurgence. As I stated, touchscreens are a big no-no for me to play a game. However, with the developers providing controller support, which could potentially allow for mouse and keyboard emulation, I think controls will largely be a non-issue for many of us Division faithful. Now, of course, I can't just download it on my Xbox and play it on my TV, but there are other options. The one I am planning on using is an Android operating system emulator to allow the game to run off of my PC, and this is called BlueStacks 5. There's a bunch of other ones out there, but this is going to be the one that I'm probably going to try out first. To this, of course, I'm going to connect an old Xbox One controller wirelessly to my PC and then run an HDMI to my TV. And this will allow me to play pretty much just like I normally do, and I'm sure many others will find different ways to cast their phones to their screen of choice and probably pair a controller via Bluetooth to enjoy the game much like any normal game. Now, with that big issue out of the way, let's talk about Division Resurgence itself. I have to be honest here. I try to build as little excitement as possible for a game as I possibly can. There have been too many hype trains and so much wasted potential over the past 8 or so years for me to allow myself to fall victim to this again. However, I can't deny the joy of seeing the Division world I love being recreated and getting something of a second chance. Sure, it is not the same game and it will have many issues, as I will talk about soon, but just consider this question for a second. Could the Division Resurgence be the closest thing to the 2013 E3 trailer we have seen from the franchise yet? I am not into the hype trains, and they will need to actually earn my respect, but if what I am hearing about this game is indeed true, we may well be looking at the new bar any future Division games will need to meet if they are to be taken seriously. Yes, this mobile title, which many agents have no desire to play, could be the Division game that finally adds the mechanics we have all been waiting for. Now, on that note, I do want to start off with the more positive side of Division Resurgence. What I first noticed when seeing the alpha footage was how close the game appears to the original Division. Sure, the graphics are only slightly better than things I remember on the PSP many years ago, but it is still nice to imagine D1 finally getting the expansion I have long wished for. Of course, We have no idea what the full scope of the game will be at launch or in the future. However, in the short term, it is nice to have a sense that this is the real Division world many of us got hooked on. That this recreated world will add all the life and activities that sadly felt missing from the original game. Again, I know this is a mobile title, and it will most likely never fully match a AAA experience, yet I can't help but see this as a second chance, as a way to give the Division the content it should have had in 2016. Yes, it is clear that this is a mobile game, but it is also the world I remember, and that gives me a glimmer of hope. Now, one of the most important things that I want to know about this game is just the full depth of the game world. How much of D1 will I be able to re-explore? What new things will I find there? And how about the DZ? Well, for a quick refresher, this is the original Division 1 map. As most of you know, the open world was one of the weakest things in the game. Sure, it was pretty large and interesting to explore once or twice, but after that, it was mostly just a large wasted area. Most of the activities were one and done, with only a few priority targets being added in much later. The only recurring events, if you can really call them that, were the named enemies that respawned every few hours. It was not the poster child for how to make an open world, yet with Resurgence, we do see a bit more thought in the world. It appears they have taken some of the better features from Division 2's open world and added world events. Plus, we will even see settlements in addition to our base and safe houses. And in the top right corner, you can even see the area for the Dark Zone. Now, I don't know if control points will appear like they are in the 2013 trailer, but at least this is somewhere to start. As for the size of the map, we will of course find out soon what is open for the alpha. But based on the old Division map and comparing it to what we can actually see on the mobile map, it does seem like it's going to be fairly large. Maybe not huge, but according to the game developers, it will roughly be about 1/3 of the Division 1 size. How they measure the map area is really anyone's guess, but I am guessing we will roughly see something about this size. And of course, feel free to come back and tell me how wrong I am in a week. I'm not sure if they will include DZs 5 and 6, but I think 1 through 4 are a pretty safe bet. I could not really see them going any less than DZ3, and as for the non-DZ, I think they will want to include as many of the D1 hotspots as possible with as little empty filler space as they can. And I'm pretty sure that Westside Piers is not going to be included, at least in this initial round. However, if the game does well, I can see more map being added regularly because they need to keep people playing to make money, which could be good for us, the ones that refuse to pay for cosmetics and the people that just grind out materials instead of paying for them. Of course, this all depends on how they actually monetize the game, which I will get into in a little bit. But before that, I want to talk about some other worries I have. As this is a game being designed for small touchscreens, I have my worries as to how challenging the AI will be. After looking at the small amount of footage provided, I must say I'm not really convinced they will be anything past slightly annoying. One of the biggest issues we are going to see is that touchscreen controls are rather sloppy, and because of this, it does appear the enemies will be as equally slow and uncoordinated. We will not be dealing with smart AI rushing for cover and avoiding headshots or explosives. For the most part, they look rather dumb, to basically just provide easy targets for us. Of course, as level and difficulty increase, we might see them get better, but as of now, I fear the PvE combat will provide little challenge to experienced agents, especially if you have opted for controller support. That said, this is of course an alpha phase, and things could get more refined as we get closer to launch and more players do end up giving feedback. Another worry I have is in line with basically what I've said about gear in the Division. The approach that we saw Division 2 take from Division 1, especially when it comes to the revamped Gear 2.0 system and how it oversimplified the stat mechanics. The overall feeling I get from the gear that we have seen from Division Resurgence makes me think it's more akin to Destiny and that rather boring stat system. It does have some selection, most notably the 3 main roles like we see in Division 2 with red, blue, and yellow cores, and most items do appear to have talent slots and mod slots depending on rarity. But after that, the only real stats we see are on weapon mods. adding things like skill damage, weapon damage, engineering, blast skill damage, or piercing skill damage. Not exactly the depth I imagine when thinking about making builds in the Division franchise. However, this is a mobile title, and I assume some tough choices needed to be made. I just hope that what is there does make for varied and unique options that don't feel as boring as the initial impressions from the game make it out to be. And building on this diversity worry, we have the hybrid Division 1 and 2 specialization system. As of now, we know of 4 specializations: Vanguard, Demolitionist, Tech Operator, and Bulwark. These specializations appear to be a mix of Division 1 and Division 2 features, which could be cool, but they also appear to lock most skill choice directly to them, which is not cool. From what I have seen, each specialization eventually unlocks 1 specialization ability and 2 skills, which means the skill combinations will basically all be removed and play little part in actual build diversity. Vanguard will have a very Division 1 style with Pulse, Mobile Cover, and the Tactical Link. The Demolitionist will be a bit more D2 with the Seeker, Artillery Turret, and Grenade Launcher. The Tech Operator will have a Striker Drone of some form, but I can't really understand what the other feature it has is. And the Bulwark, which most of us can understand just by the name, will be a shield build. However, they did not show this during the actual bits of gameplay. The only bit that we saw was from the reveal trailer. However, if you paid attention to the limited gear selection, you would have noticed how the pistol slot appears to be removed from the game. So it appears the Resurgence Bulwark is a much larger version of the Crusader shield. And I'm not sure if it will have any limitations, but the weapon being used does appear to be an SMG. Now, how will specialization hurt or help this game is pretty much anyone's guess. For me, the loss of customization is another example of how the franchise keeps watering down the knowledge needed to make builds. But again, it is a mobile title, so comparing it directly to how a full version should be is not exactly fair. In the end, all I can do is hope for the best and that the system is fun despite any of these mobile gaming limitations. Now, I want to talk about my biggest concerns. How is the game going to approach microtransactions? Starting off with the game's base, we can already see possible signs for how or what they could charge players for. It could be something simple like added missions and map size, more akin to how traditional expansions or DLC works. Or it could be any number of small time-saving things like materials or currency or, level boosts, that kind of stuff. However, I think maybe the best way to explain my concerns would be to show you an example of a free-to-play model that I don't actually hate. Crossout is a fairly old free-to-play title that I actually have spent a good amount of time in without really spending much money at all. I love the vehicle customization and the wide variety of items that can be crafted in the game. However, it does have its own issues, although not nearly as bad as many others. The premise is fairly simple. You compete in both PvE and PvP battles to earn rewards and faction reputations, which you then use to craft items. Now, some of these missions require a currency known as fuel to participate in, and you are given some daily, but for more, you actually need to farm it. This mandates that players either alternate fuel farming and farming rewards, wait for a given amount of time, or use an in-game auction house to buy additional supplies, or engage in microtransactions. Overall, the multiple options make the system pretty fair and less abusive. However, once you start getting into the higher level materials and higher score PvP battles, the game becomes more and more encouraging of the microtransaction system. Crafting basic items for newer players is instant, as long as you have the base materials. Moving up to the next rarity, it now takes 15 minutes to craft an item. Then eventually, it moves up to 5 days of waiting to craft an item, which of course have the option to finish immediately provided you pay for it, which either means hours and hours of more grinding just to finish it immediately, or using microtransactions to purchase it instantly. Of course, one of the things I really enjoyed about Crossout is the auction house, which allowed me to sell the items that I did not really use much for newer items that I wanted to try. However, just like grinding, this could take days or weeks for someone to sell or buy something, and in between, you are without the items that you are selling. Again, encouraging microtransactions for purchasing of in-game currency to get items faster. And in an era where most players have little to no patience, I can see this being a huge cash haul for that developer. Now, as I said, I liked the feature because it allowed me to slowly build my inventory over weeks and months without spending money. But still, it did mean I was at the whim of players who spent hundreds or thousands to get the items now, which in a game that features as much PvP as it does can be annoying. Thankfully, one thing the game does pretty well is balance the player base. All items have a score, and anytime you matchmake for PvP, there is a gear score bracket trying its best to keep low score builds from fighting high score builds. While sometimes the player count requires it to be a bit too flexible, the use of AI controlled bots does help fill slots and avoids the worst kind of unfair fights. Now, the only thing that I've ever actually purchased from this game was a season pass to earn more rewards, and that was after almost a year of playing the game. I did this mostly because I felt I should support the devs who really did seem to keep the game rather fun and exciting without punishing non-paying players very much. It is free after all, and I had really gotten more enjoyment out of the game than the $10 or so that I actually spent on the season. So while I consider Crossout maybe one of the best free-to-play examples on the market, I can see how in some ways it is still too much for the average gamer, which leads me back into Division Resurgence. Based on what we know about the microtransactions possibilities in free-to-play games, it is very hard to ignore what could be signs of a future headache. I very much doubt Ubisoft will be as friendly in terms of options as Crossout is. I am almost 100% positive they will not include an auction house or worthwhile trading system that allows players to bypass pay mechanics regularly. From the way the upgrading and crafting system seems to be designed to the way that the mission rewards are allotted, it could all go very wrong very easily. Just imagine how bad it could be. For example, only being able to play a mission or activity once a day or once a week to earn rewards. If you wanted to do more than that, you might need to buy a weekly pass. Imagine if these shade crates are timed to only open once a week, but someone can pay to reset them all as much as they like, as often as they like. And this goes for every item, every currency, every material in the game. Sure, it might seem generous at the start, but what happens when you are playing near endgame content and are trying to max out your character? Will new specializations cost $20? Will exotics be sold for $50 bundles? And of course, how about endgame crafting? If the base tier items take 4 minutes, how long could it take to craft named items or exotics? A day? A week? Or could it take a month like I've seen in some games? Now, I'm not trying to be a fearmonger, but in the absence of information, the mind will of course wander. I think the best course of action would be for the Resurgence team to fully consider the impact such things will have on the game and the franchise as a whole down the line. If the franchise has a future, that is, which I hope it does. Then they need to exercise monetization restraint and also be upfront about these things as soon as possible, or this could just blow up in their faces. Anyway, I think the Division Resurgence has the potential to finally offer some of the best features we have seen from the franchise. If the shared open world turns out to be a reality at launch, if the PvP is a fun and dynamic part of the game with more focus on tactics and less on wiggles, if the map offers the best living world features from Division 1 and Division 2, and if the game is not a nightmarish microtransaction hellscape, then maybe this will be a great addition to the Division. But anyway, we'll find out here shortly. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.